Welcome to Always Ageless with Valerie V, the show where we are your resource for everything for whether you're an aging adult, whether you're the child of aging parents, or whether you're a caretaker. We are your resource and we are your go-to place. Thank you for joining us again today. We're excited to have with us Cathi Coridan, who's going to introduce herself, tell us a little bit more about her. We had Cathi on our show before and we enjoyed her so much. And she's so full of information. We invited her to come back. And this is kind of a different show. This is our Thanksgiving show, our holiday show, in our fall colors. And we wanted to talk about things that are challenges for families as well as aging parents during the holiday season. So we invited Cathi to come and talk to us about some of the insights that we have from both sides and how we can make the holiday season and our Thanksgiving together a really special time for both sides. And that's sometimes a challenge, as we both know. I know, Cathi, you're aware of that, where you've got the kids that come and they have one set of expectations, and the parents have another set of expectations. And sometimes you have blended families and relatives in that family you've never met before. So let's get right into it, Cathi, and talk about over the field,
over the river, and through the woods.
Absolutely. And I also remember the song we remembered is We Gather Together and thank the Lord's blessing at Thanksgiving. So let's talk about Thanksgiving. Cathi Coridan, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to be here. We are covering a broad geography of the United States here in Southern California, and I'm in North Texas. And this is the time where I think they've said again, another record number of people are going to be traveling over the Thanksgiving holidays, and then again through the rest of the winter holidays to see families. And one of the things that happens when you have seniors and adult children is that it can sometimes be a time of discovery and a time of challenges and a time of concern. And so I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to have a conversation about what some of the things that can happen. So I want to tell, if I can, two stories really quickly.
Sure, of course.
Okay, the first is that mom and dad and the teenage kids get in the car, they pack it all up. They're just going to see grandma and grandpa for Thanksgiving. Christmas is going to be held at home, but they are really looking forward to this, and they're looking forward to grandma has always made the best turkey, and her stuffing is just the best. And everybody's got all this excitement on their way, and they get to the house. And the first thing they notice is that the lawn's a little bit overgrown and the bushes just haven't been trimmed in a while. And wow, kind of, is everything okay? And they walk into the house with all this excitement, and the teenagers are all excited. And they see that grandma and grandpa haven't cleaned. And these are usually people that, the house is meticulous, and there's stuff stacked, and there's old newspaper stacked, and the mail hasn't been opened. And then they get into the kitchen and they start to discover, the dishes aren't really put away. And as they move through the greeting with grandma and grandpa, there's just something that's a little bit off. And these are people that they were on FaceTime with a week ago, making all these plans. And so
what happened? Sure.
What happens is you see the entire environment, and you see the change that happens possibly since last Thanksgiving. And it's unsettling, and it's really concerning. And the kids don't see as much of it because that's grandma and grandpa who are kind of expected to be old. I can say that.
Sure.
But the children, mom and dad, it's like, what happened, and what else haven't we seen? And so it's a time when the adult children begin to ask a lot of questions and don't know what to do. And is it safe for mom and dad to be here? And we've got these things that are going on. Are they taking their medication on time? And have they been to the doctor? And are the bills paid? These things that they see on the surface, they then ask deeper questions about. And it can really be unsettling. And, you know, let's say that they drove from North Texas to Southern California for this. That's a long way away.
It is.
And so, kind of, what are we supposed to do? And being totally caught off guard and unprepared. And that happens thousands of times over this next 10 weeks of life, because some family didn't go for Thanksgiving. They connected for Christmas or Hanukkah or one of the other winter
Or New
holidays
Year's, sure.
or
Yeah.
New Year's. And so, but it's that same dynamic. And the thing that I know, and you know, in our work with seniors in the housing area, is that January and February are the highest times of moving into senior living communities of the whole year.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's important to talk about this, because that isn't always the answer. And there's a lot of things that go kind of in the middle. And I want to introduce another story in this. I said I had two stories. So that's the
Okay,
one,
sure.
and that's kind of a broad
We'll
stroke
go back to that,
story,
sure.
right? The second one is a family that I worked with, and that I got a call on Thanksgiving Day. And it was from a friend of mine who was the really close friends of another family that I knew but didn't know well. And that she'd gotten a call. She wanted me to call her friend Bill. And his father, they lived in a 55 plus community farther out in the suburbs. They had a high needs daughter who lived in the house with them. Dad had fallen, gone into the hospital, hip broken, and needed to go to rehab, which they hadn't expected. So they'd kind of taken care of while Dad was in the hospital. But when they found out that Dad was going to be in rehab, it became really different, because Mom had early stages of dementia.
Oh.
And so we have a high needs daughter taking adult daughter and the mom. And while at night that was fine, the daughter worked. So I was very fortunate. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about, is to have someone, if you're working with seniors, have a network of people who also work with seniors and provide other services than what you do. I was really fortunate that I had several, but I had two specific home care companies that I could give the cell phone numbers on Thanksgiving to the family and say, whichever one of these answers or that you connect with best, go with them.
They're
No
your people.
questions.
Yeah.
They're your people. They're my colleagues. This isn't some number I'm looking up.
Sure.
And so to have the resources as folks that work with seniors and care about seniors to ask about local resources, because then they had somebody in the house the next day supporting Mom and really able to put another leg on that stool in that situation. So the holidays, when you have this discovery in the first scenario of, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, or you have a crisis, which was the second scenario, how do you work through it on a holiday? It's a really high.
Yeah, both of those are really challenging situations. And you're right, we go through them all the time. I mean, I've been through them this week, where unexpected situations, and you never know what's going to happen. So Cathi, let's go back to the first situation. And the family arrives and they, of course, you can always just dig in and clean house. But what do you do in a situation like that?
Well, that solves the surface problem, but it doesn't answer some of the underlying questions. So that from where I sit, I see three things that are real important that we think of as seniors ourselves, and you and I are both square in that category. And
they say yes. Yeah.
Yes. And you are fortunate to have your mom, so you have this extra generation. And also adult children. It's important when you come into a surprise like that, both situations were a surprise, that you have three things. One is to be able to gain perspective on it.
Okay.
That really kind of thinking it all the way through and not being reactive, but kind of what are the things you need to know? What are the ways, what are the questions you need to ask? So for the adult children that are going to go visit grandma, these are some of the pieces that are important. And I'll get into the details on that in a second.
Okay.
The second piece is a plan. So two P's and an R. A perspective, a plan. It doesn't have to be the lifelong plan, the plan from all. It can be a short-term plan to get you to get you between Thanksgiving and Christmas or New Year's.
Sure.
And then the third piece is the best resources. And that's why I wanted to share the story of Bill, because that I think is an important thing of really having knowledge of who in your community are the key people that you can reach out to and tap into them to get the resources that you need. Because otherwise, you're relying on Google, and that is not where you want to go to get high quality care. So let's just have
you could use resources for your first scenario also for the children who
oh,
arrive.
absolutely.
And they can call on resources to help them.
Right. And
I won't jump ahead of you. So
that's okay. Right. And there are a lot of ways to find resources about how parents age when they begin to show signs of that. We don't jump to conclusions. We gather some resources and really look and see, and they're local high quality resources. So let me go back to perspective.
Okay.
If you can have the perspective of, okay, we just need to get somebody to come in and clean the house every once in a while. But if there's spoiled food in the refrigerator and the bills haven't been paid, and we aren't sure what kind of medications they are remembering to take and not, and you're seeing a little bit of forgetfulness or kind of zoning out, then you need to ask a different set of questions.
Yes.
And just seeing all those things does not mean it's time to move them into assisted living this week. It means it's time to begin to find out what resources are available, what resources the parents have already accessed or not.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Getting the perspective from the parents on what do they see going on without it being with the kind of care and empathy to ask good questions without judgment. And I think when we're kids, we're either gonna, I am a previously certified but in recovery alpha daughter. And
Right, yep.
I'm the one that they all kind of say, oh God, she's come to town. Because I was just going to come in and call it like it is. And there's
Right,
some beauty to that, but there's also, I think, knowing what I know now, I would have handled things with my dad differently in different places. But to take and really assess, is this a crisis? Is this a mounting situation because of one or two things that happened that if we can go back and kind of address that, the rest of it will take care of itself? Are there other local resources? Is there a cousin or a niece or a nephew or another grandchild that lives close by that has seen the grandparents, and can give some perspective as to what they've seen go on?
Sure. And what's going on? Sure.
What's going on? To ask the questions, I call it with care, to get clarity about the situation, to really understand how the seniors see what's going on. Mom and Dad, have you been feeling okay? This isn't kind of the way we're used to seeing the house.
Sure.
How can we be the most helpful? What can we help out with? How can we support you? And because you're probably going to get a lot of resistance from when you come in and say, okay, it's time to move you to the home.
Right.
That's going to shut down. So they want to continue to live at home. So what are some things that can be done? What are some safety hazards? Trip hazards falls at the number one. We've had that conversation.
We had that conversation yesterday.
Yes. So, what are some things that can be done to clear some space and move some furniture? What are some things that can be done to put pillboxes together that say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on them? what are some ways that we can give support to mom and dad to maintain as much independence as possible? And then
And
make a decision if that's not going to be able to happen.
sure. And also, don't you think it's important to be able to assess their communication with you? Are they telling you the truth? Right.
Yeah.
Is dad saying, pulling you aside and saying, to tell you the truth, your mom's not doing so well. And yet I don't want to put her in a home. I care, I love her. I promise I'd stay with her till death do us part. And I'm struggling with this. And she won't let me be in the house. She won't let me clean. She won't let me do this, right? Or saying, no, everything's fine. Everything's great. We don't need your help, right? So so being able to assess as the children, right, as the visitors, what's the truth and what is not the truth.
Right. And with the children, two things. One is the adult children still tend to act with what we call a lot of executive function, because
Sure.
most of them are still working
Sure.
and they encounter problems all the time. So their jobs is often to find the solution, and they come into the parents' home with, okay, we'll fix this. And it's like, that was me. And yeah, that's you. And yes, that's why we love each other so much. But and we really understand each other, is that it's important to allow the focus to stay on the senior first and the adult child second. Yes, the adult children are going to get back in the car or get back on the airplane and go back to North Texas. And they have a busy life. And I just said they have two teenagers and their entire world. And then they feel like they have to take care of the parents on top of that. That sometimes tends to elevate the situation that is a lifestyle or a situational scenario into a crisis. And it's the kids going home and feeling like they have to solve it before they go, or find a situation that will work better, that
Right.
kind of moves something from, you have to kind of make a couple changes and see what works, into a crisis. We got to fix this now. And that's how, remember how I said before that January and February are the top months for people to move into senior living communities.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
crisis placements oftentimes are not the good placements, because didn't have time to really check out whether there was a good fit, the financial pieces of it. There's hidden fees, and then they find out, then they have to take they say they pull them back out, or they want to go to a different kind of one that's a geographic cure, or the idea is, okay, let's move everybody to North Texas and we'll take care of, and the parents know nobody here. So all of those reactions, and that's why I say the first P is perspective. Let's really kind of understand what a crisis is and understand what a lifestyle situation is and understand what a situational change is. And then
Cathi, all of these things are real.
Mhm.
They are so real. There's someone watching or listening to us today who's going through this exact same situation. I know
Yes.
it because every day I go through it, I hear from or find somebody who's going through the same thing. And I find myself thinking, Cathi, these people need help. They need
Oh,
to
yeah.
know what I'm learning. And I didn't learn it young. And my mom's 105. I'm still learning, right? And so these are real issues that people are dealing with every day.
And one of the things that I talked about, and I'm still a realtor. I also work a lot with other agents that work with seniors so that we learn how to communicate this well in our communities. I have a saying that everybody has a senior. So
We
this
do.
isn't about selling a house. This
No.
is about advocating for senior awareness in the community, because what I hear people say to me all the time, the connected to what you just said, I wish I'd known you when.
Mm.
And it isn't because I was going to sell the house. It's because I know the placement people. I know the people that are certified senior advisors and that work to do care coordination for all the pieces of the senior's life. I know people who are in home care and home health care, like in that previous example, and I can introduce you to my friends. And I want my community, and I want in this, both Southern California on the radio show and the wider group on the podcast piece of this, to know that if you call a seniors real estate specialist, that you probably get someone that knows all those people. If you call a senior placement specialist, you'll probably get to know someone that knows all those other people, not just the assisted living piece, but to get someone in your community that understands where the senior resources are, and to begin to have those conversations as conversations. Because the worst part is when you make a bunch of decisions under a lot of pressure as a reaction,
right?
There can be financial and emotional consequences to this that last years.
And we talk about this in our group, making among those of us who do this, that we talk about making a decision based on knowledge rather than crisis. And yet we do. We make decisions on that. And I don't want to cut you off because I don't exactly know where you're going with this, and I want to let you do this, but how do we make this decision? And often, Cathi, you find realtors who come in and say, okay, well, they need to sell their house.
Right. And to know that it's a senior real estate specialist, right?
We are one,
because we are too.
Yes.
So, but it's a seniors real estate specialist, and oftentimes kind of doing a little extra digging to see how they interact in the community. One of the things about us is that we're members of networks that have, so that if it was someone going from North Texas to Southern California, they might call me because they know me. And I would encourage that from wherever they're from, call the people in their community that they know have the investment in the seniors. And I know how to call you, or to call, but we have colleagues in Northern California, we have colleagues in Wichita, we have colleagues in Houston and in Boston and in Northern Virginia. We have colleagues all over the country that we would call and say, I got this call and they're needing to have some support. Who do you know, and what is the best way? Would you be willing to be the primary source for them to connect with a placement person? If they discover that they need a power of attorney or a medical power of attorney, what if it is that situation? Because I used a vague enough situation that it could be that they're just having a bad week and they need to get their meds straightened out. Or it could be that something really serious, like you said, dad comes in and says mom is. So, who they may need to explore with an attorney, getting both a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. That may be the appropriate piece. The estate attorneys in Southern California. I know the estate attorneys in North Texas, and I would make a very warm referral on an urgent basis to make sure that this could happen. So it's the networking, it's the people-to-people connection, rather than finding something. Using the family lawyer is fine if they're an estate attorney and not a corporate attorney that is used to, helping people out of through some kind of a business situation or getting them through a car wreck. We really want someone that's an estate attorney so that they can look at the whole piece. So how do we make a transition plan? How do we make a life plan?
Good question, Cathi. How do we do that?
Well, one of the things we do, and we talk about this all the time, and your mom is one of my favorite examples of this, is that it's based as a longevity plan. We are not just looking at what are all the horrible things that are happening. No, they've lived in this neighborhood for 45 years. They have neighbors who really care. So that you go over and you chat with the next door neighbor or the person across the street, and you hear, I've been really concerned, but I wasn't sure I should call you. And then you get a little more information. That's that perspective piece. And then you know that you exchange phone numbers so that you can
ask
have
them
those.
So you ask them what they've seen about your parents, if they've noticed anything.
Yeah. Or you could just start out by saying, when we drove up, we were really surprised that the shrubs are kind of overgrown and the lawn doesn't look cared for. Yeah, well, we've had some concerns, and we usually go back and forth, but they haven't wanted us to come over recently. So that you have some cues, so that you really gather information.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and like I said, it's with care that you want more clarity on what's going on, because you're having to kind of invade your parents' space.
You do.
And usually it's the parents that are taking care of the adult children. That's been the 40, 50 years of that. And then all of a sudden that table starts to turn, and we don't need to parent our parents. We need to be advocates for our parents and support systems for them. And I think that when we start parenting them, it can become patronizing and feel really crappy to the parents.
So let's talk about that, getting to know the neighbors, because I personally struggle with this. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. I should have made more effort to get to know the neighbors, because my mom lives alone. So I don't want people in her house who we don't know and we don't trust. And so I'm very protective of that. And knowing what I know now, it would be a good idea to get to know those people, as you're saying, and saying, here's my number. If you see anything, feel free to give me a call, reach out to me, and see who they are, because maybe they would like to go visit your parents. And in one situation, about 2 years ago, we met a neighbor who said, we were concerned, but we didn't want to call you. And they should have. And we should have had that relationship.
Right.
Right.
And it's I know the same thing from having in the last years taking care of my dad, and my stepmom was there, and she was a year younger than he was and in better health, and she was the caregiver, but the neighbors were concerned. And so I've talked about this before in other venues, that my dad fell after having had about a year and a half after having had surgery, and my stepmom, God bless her, and we just lost her 2 years ago, kept her home in San Francisco, and she wanted my dad to come with her, but he'd get bored, so she would go for a week every 4 to 6 weeks for respite from taking care of him. And so once it became clear he couldn't be in that house overnight by himself, I would come she would pay my airfare from DC. I would come and stay for a week. I'd use her car, so there was no, I had that.
Sure.
And I worked remotely so that I could kind of keep things going, but I was there. My siblings had the rest of the time kind of backing up and supporting them. And so I could be there, and it had a lot of benefits to it. But one of the things I did was to spend intentionally a little more time with the neighbors on either side. And they had my phone number, even though they saw my siblings a lot and always knew when they were there, because it was the front driveway.
Sure.
That we could chat back and forth. And it gives a sense of security a little bit, there's another set of eyes watching. It's like when we were kids and all the moms knew what we were doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the plan, so what if you were in that situation, what would you say the plan should look like?
I would say you'd want to look at something short-term and then long-term, because and part of that is talking to mom and dad. It really surprises me that can we and the kids help kind of get things cleaned up and straightened up, because it's clear that you've been struggling and we want to be here for you. But once we do that, it is, are you comfortable with my talking to your doc? I would love to be able to just have a conversation. I don't want to overreact. I want to be able to be supportive. I want to, and I always use the stool analogy, I want to put another leg on the stool for you.
Yes.
And so sometimes when you go to the doctor's office, and it happens for me, it happens for all of us, you don't hear all of what they say. And this way, I can ask some questions that you might not think of, but I can't be here. So if I could talk to them, that would make me feel better and make me feel like I was able to kind of talk to you better about it. And
Okay.
that's putting it in a win-win instead of, I'm going to go tell the doctor that you're screwing everything up, which is going to be how it sometimes feels. And so, and that's getting out of that parental role with your parents and really being a support and offering options that are win-win options as much as possible. There's an author that you and I are familiar with, and I think that any adult child of an aging parent might want to think about this as a resource. The author's name is David Solie, Solie, and the book is How to Say It to Seniors.
Yes.
And it's available on Amazon, and it's a great, it's a little bit dated, but it is just this phenomenal wealth of information and perspectives on talking to seniors. The core piece of this is that, especially after about in the mid 70s and on, that the developmental needs of a senior, just like we have developmental needs of an infant and a toddler and a preschooler and a teenager and a young adult, we have developmental needs for us as seniors. And our need is to leave a legacy. It's kind of making sense of what our life has been about and leaving a legacy. But the conflicting piece with that is also maintaining control. And so when you're trying to maintain control, that comes first, because that's the survival, that's the fight or flight. And we're just going to hang on so that dad's piece, the way I love the little scenario that you came up with, dad pulls mom, the kids aside, and mom this, and I don't want to. And, I've been that legacy piece. I said, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, and I will be here for her. Yeah, Dad, but there's some ways that you can do that, that make it healthier for both you and mom. Are you open to listening to that? Because I don't want to put her in a home. They have just these old people in wheelchairs drooling in the hallway. No, that
used to be the case. And that was that's the perspective, the viewpoint that I had.
Right. And you send people there to die. That was always both of my grandmothers went into a nursing home, and that was their last place. And there are assisted livings now. And if part of the concern that dad had with mom is memory, there are, and she hasn't been, had an assessment yet by a neurologist to see what's really going on, then that can be part of that short-term plan. Because you can have a short-term plan, and it can be a week or a month or 3 months. It can be let's look at all of what's going on, and what are the resources that we have that we can support you with. I can't come and stay here because I'm in North Texas and I have a family, and dad knows that. I don't want to bother you because you have all these things going on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, can I find somebody here for you that can come in and really support, to give you the kind of resources, to have somebody come in? Dad, you're a veteran. Do you understand that as a veteran, you can have some home care and in-home care support for activities of daily living, like cleaning and doing the grocery shopping? You can have people come in and do that at no cost because it's part of your veterans benefits. Did you know that?
Cathi, let me ask you a question. So in case anyone who's listening to us has a question about that, so can they get that even if the care is needed for the spouse who is not the veteran?
I believe that because the spouse is also older and not able to, that they would assess the dad, but that they would be able to, dad isn't able to clean the house and do the grocery shopping.
I see what you're saying.
Taking care of mom. So I think that fits.
Okay.
And that, that there are we can find some really good doctors to spend the time with mom to really understand everything that's going on. Because there are so many things that we can do now with diet and medications to really support. And again, I said this before, and this is where it comes in. It's a longevity lens. How can you to continue to live your best life? You're not living your best life now. How
Right.
can we bring some supports in to make things, my little tagline for it is less stressful and more successful. But that what that means is it's not as much a burden to you, and you're both able to spend much better quality time together.
Right. Right. So then with that plan, Cathi, because look, face it, Thanksgiving weekend's only 3-4 days, maybe 5 days at the most, but and then you go back home. So you have to leave your parents there. So do you have a plan then when you say we'll check in back with you on a weekly basis, or and it seems to me that maybe having an in-home care person would also be a great idea, because then you've got someone there every day or 2 or 3 times a week that they have eyes on your parents. Right.
And they can be making, they can also help with meal prep, so we can improve the quality of the meals that are being served, and that will raise everybody's health a little bit more, and their energy and their focus, and making sure that and you can talk to your folks about rest. And if it was in Southern California, that scenario where we're traveling from here to there, I would suggest to reach out to you and to ask you who you recommended.
Sure.
I would say, if they called me, we had that scenario set that they knew me through the Chamber of Commerce, and they texted me and said, oh my God, here I am, and what am I going to do? I would say, I would love to put you in touch with my colleague, Valerie. She's a senior focused agent in Southern California. She is connected to home care, home health care, placement people, and attorneys. And she will be able to say, go here, stay away from there. And she can be one of the point people as well. It isn't about selling the house. It really is about, because dad could end up being at home for a long time.
Sure.
Or we might, if, then it gives you time to get a financial planner to help them understand, if you do A, what's it going to cost and how long will that last? B, what's it going to cost? So those decisions have to be made over months.
Absolutely.
Not in that weekend.
No.
So how can I find the person in Southern California to help put this planning process in place to bring the right people to the table? You're not going to try to do their power of attorney for them. You're not going to go in and clean their house. You're going to help them find the right people to do that, and stay in contact to try to, you're a point of contact in a month, in 6 weeks, in whatever that is. How did that go? How's it going with the home care? Is that working out fine? How much better are you feeling in a house where, we made some space and you're able to kind of have clear paths, and you're not as concerned about mom falling? How is that going? Are you feeling good about her being able to sleep through the night? Are you having any, sundowner stuff? Are there any, because we know enough about some of these issues to ask the question that leads us to the next person.
Right.
I'm not treating memory loss. I'm just make sure that you have a person in your world that can be the best local resource for that.
Right. Yep. And again, I just keep thinking that things go along and everything's fine. I have another person I know that's in another state, or in the South, and their mom's lived with them for years, and she has dementia, but they all live together and they're able to manage her, and it's okay. But then she fell and broke her arm. So now we have another set of crises, and we have to have someone, because she was independent. She had her own room, lived on the other end of the house. Everything's fine. But now, let's say that it was my mom. Right now, I have to bathe her. I have to take care of her. I have to dress her. I have to feed her. She can't do anything without her arm, and your whole world changes. So we run into this all the time, and we talk about this, Cathi, in our group, that you have to have a plan, although none of us want to make one.
Right. And that's the other plan, a short-term plan we talked about, over this weekend to get us to Christmas, to New Year's, to March. Now let's talk about the plan that we sit down with mom and dad. So maybe I, as the adult child, come back after the first of the year, and we sit down and we've taken care of the power of attorneys and we've taken care of all of that. Now, mom and dad, if these things, everything, we've got things stabilized, and boy, it's just a whole different thing to come this time than it was last time. My heart feels so good.
Yeah.
If something happens, using exactly the story that you just told, Valerie, if something happens and one of you breaks your arm or breaks your hip, go back to my story about Bill and his family.
Yes.
Where dad was in rehab. And then within the year, they sold the home, moved into independent living that had an assisted living with it. And it had the happiest ending we could, because I was coaching Bill Jr. all the way through on the kind of things to look for. And they did a really good job. I wasn't in the planning table. I was whispering. And that's sometimes part of our role. But if that long-term plan, so that if something happens and you do need to go into a senior living community, would you be open to going and touring one or two of those with me so that you can see for yourself? They aren't the home anymore. Man, some of them are like a cruise ship on land. I'd love to live there because people are feeding you and cleaning up after you and
you
everything
got all the time. There's always meals available.
And you have friends that are your same age, and they have a bus that takes you, downtown to the art museum. So it's all, all the things. They have gardens in the backyard that if you want to plant a garden. So I want you to be able to see that, so that as you're thinking through things, you're at least getting like reality in it. And yes, it costs money, but it also costs more money. Did you know everybody wants to live in their home as long as possible? And I am one of those. And
as are we.
Yet we know that about 17% of people actually do die in their home. So there's an imbalance there. So it's probable that you may have to go wouldn't you like to know where that is? And wouldn't you like to make that decision and not having me make it from Texas?
Absolutely.
I think that, let's do some things that give you the most independence and the most decision making. And you know what we'll do with this plan? We'll put it on a shelf and only bring it out if. But once we bring it out, those are your decisions.
Right.
And it's everything from maybe, going someplace else to live, to what to do with the Waterford collection, what to do with the artwork, what to do with the special, Beanie Babies, whatever it is that I had to clean. I had somebody that I probably gave away a large trash bag full of Beanie Babies. It's, what are the things that you have? What are things that you'd like to have, maybe have the kids have, that you're not using right now, that you can just put their name on it, or have them, when we come back for over spring break, maybe let the kids put a tag on what they would prefer to have, because they would love a gift from you. So it's putting a plan together that's a life plan for their stuff, life plan for them, life plan for their living, and a life plan for the what if they fall and break their arm, hip, back.
Right.
Because that's what happened to my dad. He fell, and then he wasn't able to stay home by himself anymore because his mobility so declined that's when the decision was made to have the boss come in and be there for him all the time. So those are family decisions, and one of the things is no two families are alike.
No.
There are step families, and that is a huge thing to consider. And, you know, how do you include them? When do you include them? You know, are they on the deed of the house? Do they have shared finances or separate finances if they married later? All those things need to be, it's like the parents want to hold the cards so tight because they want to keep control. And it's then just kind of asking them gradually, not all of a sudden yank on everything out of their hand, but sharing and building the trust to say, I'd love to be just, can I have no ability to move any money, but can I just have the ability to see in your checking account? I
Sure.
just want to make sure you have enough funds and you don't run out, and that the bills are being paid as you set them up to be paid and everything's okay.
Sure.
So
And
that's
sometimes,
making that plan.
and I think there's two things, and we've talked about this, is one is when the parents are really, really want to protect, they don't want to bother you. And maybe they've had that kind of a relationship. Maybe their family relationship or family dynamics are such that the parents and the kids never really were that close that they shared that kind of information. I know families where the kids have no idea about the parents' personal information. And then there's cases where they want the help, they just didn't want to tell them, they didn't know how to share it with them. And this has been a great discussion because I think that you know, certainly we're not the only ones that are going to have this discussion or not know what to do. We can read the stories and hear the stories and listen to the stories all day long. And I think about the next step though, is that Thanksgiving ends and the kids have to go back home. And first of all, the guilt they feel, right, that I have to leave them here at night. You know, when I leave my mom, I feel guilty that I have to leave her there alone. And so I can imagine that other people are feeling the same thing, and who even live further away. So how do you handle that? And is there anything that you see in technology now, Cathi, to stay in touch with the parents?
Yeah, I mean, FaceTime or Zoom is a great way to do it. And I think the last piece of that short-term plan, as you said, is let's plan to talk twice a week. And let's plan to do it on video. And let's make sure that, you know how to use whatever that technology is, whether it's an iPad or a computer or the phone. And I just want to make sure that the other thing that we do is to maybe make a text chain if something goes wrong, that you can just push the button and say, I need to talk to you right now. And I'll drop everything I'm doing. If I get that text from you, I would drop everything I was doing and I will call you right back. So that's that kind of built-in crisis management piece. And, you know, let's talk it through. I mean, unless mom's on the floor bleeding, then you call 911 and then you call me.
Of course.
But to say, let's talk, and then have the kids call, I mean, in the scenario we set up, just to chat, tell them what's going on at school, but the kids have eyeballs on the parents, because that really is paying attention. That acronym of CARE that I had, we said clarity, but the second is attention to all the pieces around them. How are they, you know, what's in the background on the Zoom? I don't, you know, mom and dad may or may not have the glitzy backgrounds, but that they can see that the clutter's building up again, all that kind of stuff. Have the respect, and this is really important, especially for professionals to go in but also for adult children to go in and respect the situation. It may look stupid to you or me, but there may have been, it may have evolved over a long period of time and gotten out of control. And that's really different. Yeah, they did some stupid things, but they weren't trying to.
No.
And so how do you respectfully get in there and ask the questions, you know, that aren't we in agreement that we're all looking out for your best interest? And that's what
Right.
I'm trying to do. And empathy, you know, it's what, how does it feel when things go out of your control? How are you, you know, as to the adult children, I would ask, how are you feeling now? How does that being out of control feel to you? Well, now let's spend some time looking at maybe what's going on in your parents' head, and they're trying to protect themselves and they're trying to protect you.
Of course.
So what does that feel like to them? So make sure that your response is taking that into account and not just reenacting the two of you when you were 16 and they were the parent and flipping those roles, because I did that, so I know what happens.
Yes, this has been a great discussion, and I know that there's so many people that are going to benefit from this. So for those of you who are viewing or listening and you have a holiday gathering coming up, please replay this and listen to it. Cathy's got some great insights and outstanding advice and suggestions for those of us who are still dealing with aging parents in so many different ways and so many different levels. And keep in mind that our show, Always Ageless, is for you. It is a resource. Please keep us in mind. Reach out, text us, call us if you have any questions and anything you'd like to hear on our show. And Cathi, please give us your contact information. So should anyone like to reach out to you, and should anyone be in your area?
Anyone to be in my area, I would love to hear from you. I am Cathi Coridan. I am a seniors real estate specialist at, out of Keller Williams in North Texas suburbs in the North Dallas area. And I also work with agents across the country and help to resource families across the country, because I have a network of 2,800 agents that I can put you in touch with. And I would be honored to be able to do that. The easiest way to get me is Cathi, and it's actually showing on the thing, so that's good. It's CATHI at yourtransitionpartner.com. And you can see it's your transition partner in the background. And but Cathi at yourtransitionpartner.com. I would love to hear your questions. I would love to reach out to agents across the country to find someone that could help your senior or the members of your family, because sometimes it's sisters and brothers, and we didn't talk about getting the whole family dynamics back in it.
No, we didn't talk about that, but we'll have to do it again.
So there may be that piece of it to really look for some support, and I'm happy to help plug you in with my contacts across the country. So,
and I need a referral, so I'm going to come to you as soon as this show is over. So thank you very much for that offer.
Okay. So I thank you for the opportunity to share this. It's my belief seniors deserve the best. This is about a new chapter of the best years of our lives. And that if I'm an advocate for seniors wanting to make a difference for seniors in my North Texas community and across the country. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. And I'm sure that you'll join me in wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving, whether it's this year or you're listening to us next year, which we hope you will. Have a wonderful, safe, and happy Thanksgiving, and blessings to all our viewers and listeners. Thank you, Cathi.
Thanks, Valerie.